Perfect. Hi, Evette. Thank
Hello,
you for joining me.
thank you.
Yeah, we don't really know we haven't met before, but we've connected on LinkedIn, and I've seen some of your posts and some of your content around Passive House and other things you're doing. So yeah, maybe as an introduction, a little bit about yourself, what you kind of working on at the moment, and then maybe a bit of your background, how you got to the point and sort of your current role.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Peter. So yeah, I'm working with Kind and Co, a main contractor based in London and the South East. And like you said, my background has been in Passive House, and it's amazing to work with a contractor who, as I've been there, in the time I've been there, we've had six Passive House developments ongoing in London, and a lot of interest in terms of site visits and people wanting to see what we're doing. So yeah, the main contractor for Kind and Co have been around for 80 years as a company. So
Okay.
there's a lot of our team members have been there for many years. And my background before I came to work with a main contractor has been working with off-site manufacturers. So this is volumetric and also panelized systems. So it's exciting kind of to be in a space where now you're kind of seeing it from a big picture, working with subcontractors who might have their systems, but now we're coordinating the whole project from end to end. So that's yeah, about me and my role as a business development manager. So often client facing, speaking with local authorities, developers, maybe housing associations, because a lot of our work is residential and a lot of it is social housing and affordable housing, which is what we need in this country. So that's feels very yeah, inspiring to me to do that every day.
Perfect. And in terms of like your background, how did you got to this point? Have you always been in construction, or is it kind of yeah, like and I guess specifically like more low carbon construction? Has that always been a passion of yours, or is it something you've kind of developed skills and
Yeah.
expertise over time?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before. My time in construction, my career basically started out with a graduate scheme.
Okay.
So I joined the company Porter Cabin Limited, and they might be known often for their cabins and temporary accommodation, but they also built out permanent buildings, schools, hospitals, really large structures that looked like permanent, buildings. So I was on that graduate scheme, and I that's it was the only place that gave me a role. They had a great salary, great benefits, and I was like, this is quite cool, but I didn't know deep down what I wanted to do. But being in that role, I was exposed to a lot of different projects, and I was, it made me think because what they did was more commercial, very commercial.
Mm,
But I was like, this, what we're doing in a factory and bringing it to site, I would love to see this in housing. I love the attention to detail, and it really gave me like a bit of a seed planted that started to grow. And because I couldn't get the residential exposure there, I started to realize I wanted to move on and take that offsite experience into the residential sector, maybe in another company that was doing it, which is funny now because I think Porter Cabin are looking into the residential sector, maybe more temporary homes.
okay.
And that's how it started. And actually, on top of that, they had a prototype in their head office in York, and that had it was a house. They said it didn't need any energy to run. It was very efficient, and that they might one day go into housing using their modules. So that was a prototype we were shown around on our graduate scheme, having the tour. And again, that planted another seed of wow, this is housing. I didn't understand passive house at the time,
Mm,
but just the
mm.
fact you can have a house that didn't need any energy bills, that was so attractive to me. It's like, why are we not doing this everywhere? And they've got this huge facility in York. Wow, I could see them starting to roll this out, but it never happened. And I think I was waiting and just trying to ask colleagues, are we ever going to go into residential? And I realized at that time I needed to find another opportunity potentially where I could get that exposure. But still, like I said, offsite construction was a passion, and I wanted to bring those two things together.
Okay, cool. So offsite. So at kind of build is that mainly like what you guys do? You do like modular offsite, is it, or is it like a range of different types of building?
It's a range, and
Yeah,
primarily it has been traditional
yeah,
because they've been around for 80 years as a company,
right, of course. Yeah.
80 years this year. So it's been a lot of traditional build, brick and block. However, in recent years, it's trying to push that envelope of what we do, and being seen ourselves as a quality contractor. How can we build better quality through passive house using
Mm,
modern methods construction? It's often, I heard, in a talk that you gave, it is
yeah,
client led. What does the client want ultimately? But we're able to have those conversations and say, have you thought about doing it this way? We've the experience in passive house, in MMC. This might make it cheaper for you. We have done projects where we said, actually, with the foundations and the ground conditions, this option using a light gauge steel system would actually be more cost effective. So then you've been able to incorporate that, and it's tick those boxes for MMC, but also the client has saved money. So it is client led, however, through our experience, able to showcase opportunities to not just do traditional works, but to bring in MMC too.
Okay, wow, that's really cool. It's funny because I would it would be really interesting to understand like your experience about how you've well, what the feedback has been with regards to, I suppose, um, MMC, light gauge steel, like you mentioned, that kind of construction, and how it's interacted with the passive house requirements. So, like for example, have you found there's been a little bit of like a learning curve with regards to making sure the quality is there, making sure the let's say the on-site elements and how it's interacted with the air tightness, those elements. I mean, I'm naming a lot of things here, but I suppose like, is there how has that been as a process? Like, did it start maybe a bit more difficult and you've got more streamlined understanding of, let's say, the main pinch points about what you have to do? Yeah,
Yeah.
anything like that.
I think yeah, the intersection between, you know, like Passive House and MMC,
Yeah.
we're still yet to bring that together completely.
Mm.
But we were on that journey because we had a few timber frame
Okay.
developments where it was a fabric first
Mm.
approach, very energy efficient, and it was we were kind of walking before we ran. So it's bringing in timber frame, bringing in light gauge steel, volumetric as well. We did. And clients saying we want it to be more energy efficient. So, you know, pushing the envelope of what we were able to achieve before later building to the Passive House standard. But the client at that point, I think, you know, post Grenfell and different things in London, was asking for more of a concrete frame
Okay.
structure.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that we combined the two yet, but it was that process of moving forward with new systems and new types of new types of systems and the quality build, which helps us then to get to the stage where we had 6 projects at the same time being built to the Passive House standard, maybe not using MMC
Right.
strictly.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
However, it is
That's where you
still
want to
it's
get to. That's kind
connection.
of that's the
Yeah.
goal. Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. And I suppose in terms of that, um, that push for Passive House as a standard in your company's work, is it something that like you yourself you've taken on board and you're like, okay, I really want to push for this, or is it something maybe externally with regards to you're finding the market is more open to that? Like how has it been for you guys and your kind of outlook on that?
Yeah, for me, it was very personal.
Yeah.
Before I even came to Kynoco, I actively sought to work with a manufacturer who was specializing in Passive House
Right.
because I was working with a timber frame panelized manufacturer,
Okay.
and I yeah I won a project. It was, you know, I think 100 to 200 homes. I'm trying to remember back now,
Hmm.
and there was a small portion that wasn't allocated to us to provide the timber frame structure.
Okay.
And I was told there's a number of homes, much smaller number, and it was Passive House. So I remember speaking to, I think it was a developer at the time, just saying, oh, you know, what's with that? What's Passive House? And it was a bit of a rabbit hole. And I started to learn. I was like, well, what's doing that on the home scheme? I didn't understand. I was like, well, this sounds great. Just, you know, all the benefits when I started to research. And I was like, wow. And again, I wasn't a Passive House consultant at the time. I didn't, you know, have any training, but that is what led me to, again, I'm quite a curious person. I want to know why something is happening, why we're not doing something. I want to maybe push and maybe move on, or you know, uncover things and speak to people. And so then that's when I said to the, you know, colleagues, I think this is where the industry might be going. I really think, you know, we should put our name on this, and maybe we would feel that the homes we're building are going to be future proof, because at the moment I don't think they are. And I didn't really want to put my name to so many homes that I felt hand on heart were not going to be of the quality that I would want to live in. So I really felt, you know, with these big house builders buying these huge numbers of kits and just putting them out, not enough insulation, not enough air tightness, it didn't sit right with me. I know that they have different you know, stakeholders and different margins, and then they don't hold the assets. So it's not as much in their interest to spend the most on the fabric of the building. However, these are people that are living there. This, you know, this is our country. This is what we should be fighting for. So I thought, no, I don't want to be part of that. So that small niche number of homes, I want to be doing that. So I went to work with a manufacturer who specialised in that passive house modular, off-site construction for homes, temporary as well as permanent. And it just felt so exciting to feel like I was making a difference, and the industry could hopefully benefit. People could live in homes that would be future proof. And then when that manufacturer was no longer in operation because of the pipeline and things just happened financially, Kynoco reached out to me because they were already on the process. They already had conversations with that manufacturer, and it was trying to tie those things together. They said, we've got an opening, I think you'd be quite a good fit. And then that's how I joined there. So it kind of happened naturally, where I saw like a gap that needed to be filled, and people were trying to do something, but I wanted to amplify that and be part of that story.
Wow, that's really cool. And then I suppose in terms of so kind of builder contractor, right? Like yeah.
Main
So I
contractor, yeah.
suppose in the same way, is that something that you're trying to do within kind and build in terms of pushing for that? There might be other people, other external factors, or maybe internal factors that are saying, like, Evette, no, this is too expensive. This is, this is not the right option, or, there's different requirements, budget constraints, like what you already mentioned. Is that something that you're still you're trying to push for, or maybe let's say you think there's misconceptions, or we're trying to get rid of those misconceptions? How has that experience changed or evolved? Because I think we're in similar positions where I'm in a contractor as well, and yeah, it'd be good to hear your
Yeah.
experience on that.
Well, Kind and Co, they are very much in alignment with the Passive House standard. They're doing it. Before I joined, they were already doing
Right.
it, and they had invested in their team, and that was exciting because it wasn't me trying to shape everyone and say we need to do it. They were already doing it, so that's why it was a good partnership, because
Right.
I was on this journey, they were on that journey, and it just was the right time, the right fit. So they invested, like I mentioned, in the site team. We have Passive House champions, air tightness trained site managers. So we have in-house people who can do that. And obviously, we want to mark our homework at the end to get a third party to test our work. However, we've got the expertise in-house, the no blame culture, especially as we're starting out over years before I joined. It's a case of we're all going on this journey together as a principal contractor with our subcontractors. If something happens on site, you drill a hole in the wrong place, a mistake is made, please just put your hands up and let us know. We're all in this together. Like I said, 80 years in the industry, there's going to be subcontractors you work with for 30 years, 20 years, maybe more. And you want to take them along with you. And of course, you're going to reach out to new partners, new suppliers. Let's all on this journey together. But it's a learning curve. Maybe you haven't been the first one, you haven't done it before. Second one, you're learning more. You keep building on that knowledge, and it's progress. So it's exciting. And obviously, it's a culture change as well, but it came from the management, it came from investment, it came from research and development, it came from the board wanting to do this. So that made it very easy. And it's more a case of speaking to clients and showcasing we have done it. You may be hesitant, but I get asked to do a lot of CPDs because maybe they've heard from architects or consultants, but they maybe not have heard a main contractor give their lessons learnt about Passive House. So that's where it's quite exciting to go in and say, well, this is our experience. We want to partner with you if you want to do it too. We've got this track record. Come and visit our sites. Come and speak to our clients. And each time you keep learning and building that knowledge, and you can bring that down the costs and try and mystify the myths and make it easy for people to go into this new standard.
Wow, that's really cool. And then I suppose, so there's subcontractors that you guys have worked with over time, and I suppose there's a pool of subcontractors that you trust and who trust you and have that understanding of the Passive House, and it's no longer this unknown thing. Is that the case where you've built those relationships, you're working with the same subbies, or what I think you've mentioned as well is you want to bring more with you want to kind of educate? Is that like an ongoing process that you guys are doing in terms of that education piece about always trying to partner with different like subcontractors and stuff like that, and I guess, what's that? Have you seen a good reception from that, or do you still need to demystify stuff? How's that gone?
Yeah, you do need to keep educating the market about what you're doing, especially if you haven't done it before. But people are very open. I think it's more commonplace now for people to at least have an awareness of Passive House. It's not so hidden and unknown. there's some kind of level of consciousness, at least in the sector that we're working in, and hopefully it'll become even more conscious as people start seeing, like, house builders. I think Barratt's just announced recently they've got a development of 800 private homes that will be built to the Passive House standard, and so someone who's not working in construction, just buying their own home, might one day hear Passive House and be like, I know roughly what that is, or I know quite enough about that, which is really exciting. So I'm not going into often a room where no one knows anything about it, which is good. And it helps that we have, you mentioned, subcontractors that we worked with for many years coming on board. But again, there's new product developments, air tightness membranes, and whether it's paper-based, liquid-based, and you've got the air tightness testing machines, and with the consultants that we're working with, the architects who are training to become Passive House designers. So you're getting more people on board. Your power team are growing and their skill set are growing. I get people reaching out to me saying, we've got this product that we're using maybe in Sweden or Netherlands or somewhere where Passive House is being built more readily in Europe, and they're coming over and saying, actually, this is coming to the market. Maybe it's an MVHR system. It's more compact. It's quieter. It's simpler to use. It's a really good interface for the end user. It's it's going to be cheaper to run, for example. Different things are coming onto the market. So I think there's a lot of innovation with different manufacturers as well. And I love hearing what's going on. Maybe you can't always put it into the next project, but it's good to know what's coming on.
In the back pocket. Like, okay, let's get it off the shelf when the client or the project's right? It's
yes, yeah. And able to say to a client who maybe, like you said, might come up with certain myths about, I've heard the MVHR is really, really loud. Actually, I was with a manufacturer at the moment. You can go to their test houses in London, come and hear it, or one in our development, that's on site nearby you, come and hear it for yourself. It's trying to not just tell but show, and help with suppliers coming onto the market and really being open to the fact that the industry is changing. You've got Future Home Standard. The standard is getting closer and closer, and clients are aware. Why not just future proof and maybe go to the gold standard, the gold standard, the golden thread, to the top, gold place, hopefully, with this standard, and then you don't have to future proof, and so you don't have to retrofit. You really future proof building that is there for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I suppose the clients that you work with, like, what types of client are you generally is your bread and butter? And in line with that one, I suppose the initial question, then are they driving that as well, or is this something that you're saying, look, we are experienced in Passive House, we recommend you do this for your building, and like, is that a conversation that happens, or is there a bit of both with regards to clients normally require it? How's that experience been?
Yeah, we often get tenders that come through and say this has already been designed to Passive House standard, and so we're approached because we're known as a contractor who has delivered that in the past. However, there are some clients who've come with a project and they're like, actually, you know what? And we've had two, I think, on site that we're building out, or just one has been handed over, that weren't built originally to the Passive House standard. Okay. Then the client wanted that later. So it's the early engagement.
Or for like the next phases, you mean?
Oh no, for that
building. Oh,
yeah.
So the Passive House, so it changed at what, like kind of stage 4 or something, or how did?
I think maybe it was stage 3. I need to go back.
At
some point. Which added extra cost and time. However, the client was determined with we want to do this, and it meant that future developments, they went on and they were designed from the start to Passive House standard. So we can alter it, we can try and make it fit. Obviously, it's not ideal. However, it's exciting at least to see that even at a later stage, a client can still turn around and say, you know what, we want to do this, and make that commitment, even if it might cost them a bit more, depending on the changes you need to make. So it does vary, but we are getting quite a few tenders that specifically say it's already been designed to the Passive House standard, and we need a contractor to help us to deliver it.
And you have that experience and background that you're like, okay, great, let's do this. So that's great. And then interesting, something I saw you post, and I think that's where we started to connect, is like you were doing this thing at Waltham Forest College, and I was like, all right, that's the down road from where I live. Like, it was interesting because you can correct me or add to what I'm saying, but I think so it's a sixth form college, or it's like a further education college where they do like vocational qualifications. And there was like this, correct me if I'm wrong, like Passivhaus hub, or this area where you're like, I don't know if you guys are leading it or someone else, or this collaboration, but you're basically educating, the next generation about these technologies and the certification and the standard, which I saw and I was like, that's fantastic. Not only is it local, but it's, the next generation. So is that something that you do a lot? And as a follow-up, how have you seen that received? Does it make like is it quite a lot for them to deal with, or is it sort of like it makes sense to them? Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, it was a phone call from someone who's part of supply chain. So I mentioned, air tightness testing. We
Mm,
had to we use a new product. Well, it's not new now, but at the time, changing over. So passive purple, for example,
mm,
by intelligent membranes. So they reached out to us and just said, by the way, we've been commissioned to build this passive house hub. That's what they do. They help go for new builds and refurbish or retrofit using the air tightness membrane, which has so many qualities to it, and we use it. And our site team have really valued working with them because they came to give training on site how to use it, whether you
yeah.
spray it on, you paint it, you roll it on, also air tightness training, just because they're in that passive house world as well. So it
Mm,
just was a great collaboration. And they said, we're working with the college, we've got this passive house hub, and we want to work with you so we can do a wall build up. And it was a partnership. So we've worked with the college, I think, in the past, and it's just helping the students understand the different roles that they can go into in construction. So there was an event at the beginning, like a panel session, where talking to the students about the finances that they can make, just really being honest, you can make money in construction. Don't think it's a dirty, poorly paid, place of work. There's a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different roles that you can take on. It just depends on your interest. Come
mm,
and explore it. So there was an area after the panel session and the talk to the students in the college where we had different systems showcase. We had Kind and Co there, my colleague. We had a banner, and just more like a careers
yeah. Career
day,
fair
kind of,
style thing.
so
Yeah, yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
career fest, construction focus, and just giving that encouragement that there's opportunities in the sector. So then we had a bit of a launch of that hub, and there's a space around the back where the students will be there, building up, brick and block and different. There's a light gauge steel system, there's a timber frame system, so different systems. MMC is part of it. Windows in a wall build up, and just trying to understand how construction works and what's the better way to build up a really good quality building through the experience we've had, showcasing what we've done. Why don't you copy that process? And there's different options that you can try out in that area. So like I said, very vocational, very hands-on, very much trying to get young people interested in the sector, because there is a skill shortage. And if you don't show and you just keep telling, then it's very hard for them to understand. And if you get people working there, coming in saying, I've got this business, I'm working in this company, this is what I'm doing, these are the videos, this is the materials, this is the product. What do you think? It can be quite a powerful statement.
Wow, no, fantastic. And I guess in terms of your experience, I'm asking this because we're going through that as well. With regards to design, so when you have a passive house project, and as the contractor, so you might be design and build contractor, for example, and you're involved at, let's say, stage 2 or stage 3 design. Um, have you like what's your general experience of, you have the passive house requirement, but there's all these other, building regulations requirements which may or may not conflict with it, and maybe force you to add things you don't want to add. I'm thinking, certainly part L, but also, of course, like there's daylight considerations, there's architectural considerations. Is that something that you get involved in and have a sort of insight in, and maybe you have like a winning formula, or like a formula where you try to, you know, as fast as the main purpose, and it's almost like these other requirements we have to meet, but always top of our agenda, if you like, is getting that Passivhaus certification.
Yeah, obviously my role is more client facing, but
Yeah.
yeah, working with our architects and consultants, it's definitely I realize that when I look at the list of everyone who's involved in a project,
Mm, mm.
it I don't think people realize the complexity that can go into just one building, all the consultants and the surveys that need to be done, and the risk management. So like you said, make sure you're ticking all those boxes and try not to cause conflicts and that they don't compromise each other. It's such an interesting dance, if you want to put it, a puzzle piece.
It's a dance.
Just to make it all together, and everyone has their place to play, and the engineers, and it can be a line that you need to walk and balance on. However, like I said, it's the process of doing it again and again, and 6 projects in, you do things on the 6th project that you might have not have done on the first one, and you keep learning and reiterating. So it's helpful to have, I keep it like a power team, people who are experienced in their field. And we have some really good architects who've worked on a number of passive house projects, and engineers who've supported me in presentation CPDs, where we came together in our specialisms and said, look, as a group, this is how we did it. We didn't do it by ourselves. It wasn't just me as working with the main contractor, or me working with this architectural firm. We all came together and we realized these are maybe the holes or the gaps, and it's how we try to fill it. And it's just finding that balance. But yeah, early engagement is so important. And I think in one of my presentations, I do put, the Building Safety Act on there, and we've got Passive House standard we're trying to achieve, and the Future Home Standard has come in, and Part L, and all these things we're trying to do. Procurement Act, how do you have early engagement and then still meet requirements? So it's everything that everyone's trying to balance, and there's a cost to that. There's a time constraint potentially for that. It's mental effort, and it's how do you use the people around you, effectively, and the resources you have to make it as easy as possible to get to the next stage.
So jumping off that, so what is something, what's an example of something on the first that you did in the first project that you've learned from, and on that 6th project you've learned those lessons, if you like? And is there anything that comes to mind that kind of right, that was something that there was a learning there was the feedback loop, and we changed it for the current projects?
Yeah, I mean, there's some projects where, for example, working with local authorities, and they've got their steps in place to make decisions, and it might take some time. So there was things that were decided about the M&E and what was going to be used, which when we looked at it was not maybe necessary. And in the long term, we just felt you can reduce costs in terms of the maintenance and operational,
like the energy strategy and the main approaches.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And we maybe showcased that we could save a lot of money here by just simplifying the M&E system. But maybe because it was a later stage, we'll have to go through the decision making process, and that could delay things. It's like, no, we're going to stick with what we've got and continue. And we have to work with the client as to what they want to do, and we can appreciate they don't want to derail the project completely by having to go back through that decision process. However, we could see very clearly that there was a cost saving that could have been had, and it's just taking that forward and maybe trying to raise that as early as possible. And even though you can, it's still up to the client whether they take that on board, and they know their mechanisms and what steps they have to go through to actually get that signed off. So it's still in their hands whether they feel that they can justify going through that. I don't know, there's some projects have to go back through planning because of certain changes, and it's like, okay, the time and the money, and it's all of those things. And we understand it's not always that easy a decision to say in the long term it's going to save you this, but in the short term it might hurt a bit to go to a drawing board. But it's those conversations that you have, and hopefully as you refine it, you can try and hopefully nip it in the bud quickly and make the better decisions at the beginning.
That's really interesting, because that is something that we're going through as well, like when we're trying to develop a project or work at early stage with a client. And we feel it's interesting. I think when you're a contractor and you're building it, and you're almost the face of the building, right? You're a face of the final, you give the keys, etc. And I think we're probably in, I think, I don't know if you agree, but we're in a unique position where we can get that feedback from the client in operation potentially, or if we have a good relationship with clients and they come back, and we can fine tune things where we can be that almost that influence to be saying, I know that this M&E system on paper makes more sense in terms of energy bills or energy efficiency on paper and calculations, but actually because of other factors such as user control, such as you say, maintenance and that kind of thing, actually we believe that if we do, let's say, a simpler approach but more effective approach, as well as, yes, it potentially lowering the capex, it's also a better user experience, and it's a kind of more simplified process. And as you say, it's using that lessons, I suppose, and then trying to infuse that into the design process again. So because there is certain barriers over certain systems that maybe, you know, policy wise, I'm not ticking all the boxes, but actually there is, you know, an operational benefit. So yeah, I'm kind of babbling on, but I think there's,
No,
I don't know if, yeah, is that something that, yeah, you
yeah.
guys, yeah.
Okay, and I think that part of that, what you said, it's important. That's why I think sales and marketing does come into it. And I think for the right products, sometimes there's things out there that people just don't know about.
Yeah.
And I, so I'm quite passionate about, you know, what I do. My role is very client facing, and maybe I'm not so much day to day in the technical. However, there's an importance to being able to showcase and what you're doing, you know, with your podcast and trying to communicate, because it's half the battle is, you know, behind the desk where no one sees you, you're doing something. But if you don't actually articulate it and get it out there, people don't know what's going on. They don't know their options. They don't know that actually there's a system out there. And because one company might be more vocal and it's very prominent and it's what they see, and it seems like, well, where else would we go? But you don't know that there's something else that is just as effective or even better and can save a lot of money. But it's just that maybe they don't have that a voice to help the audience be aware of what they can offer in the market. So when different manufacturers reach out to me, it's quite exciting because I maybe have never heard of them before. They're trying to get their voice out there. They're trying to say, we are here, we've listened, we're seeing that there needs to be change and innovation. We've got something smaller, like I said, more compact, it's quieter, it's better, it's easier to use, and we're available. Come and see us. I would never have known if they didn't reach out to me. So it is everyone coming together and showing what they've got, and obviously you can test it for yourself and see, does it really live up to what they've said, and hopefully you've got mechanisms in place to really do your due diligence. But if you don't know it's there, you can't even start that process of testing. So it's part of that story, sales and marketing, and you know, getting in front of the people you need to get in front of.
No, that's I think that's great, because I think an old cliche maybe in the construction industry that I've heard a few times is we do what we know. So we'll always, let's say, use the same, whether that's same systems or same approach or whatever it is. And my personal opinion is that approach has decelerated, if that's the right word, progress with regards to the performance gap and things like that. Because, you know, if, let's say, if a big house builder knows that if they do a certain system ticking certain boxes, they will, you know, be able to continue to deliver a set system or set design. Whereas you're coming in and saying, which is really interesting, is no, there's always new things. There's always new things to explore. And I think from my experience, and I'm not in business development, I'm more in design, but it's interesting to see that approaches. There's that fear maybe of like, okay, but you know, are they established? Worrying about, I don't know, insurances, things that I'm not really involved in. So off the top of my head, that kind of elements. And I guess what you're saying is, like, from your perspective, which I think is refreshing, is no, but let's give them a go. Let's see what they can do. Let's try and maybe, I don't know, maybe trial it in a smaller project or a certain thing, and then and see how that works, and basically give those people a chance, because they're innovators at the end of the day. They're thinking and trying to create solutions that, you know, ideally outperform what we currently have. So I think that's really refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a
Kudos to you.
balance, because thank you, it's a balance, but you know, because actually, as much as you want to help those who are going forward and trying to step out beyond the norm, you still have to, like I said, due diligence, and ensure that you do have pilot, or you ideally, you know, sales and marketing isn't just about in a message out there for the sake of it. Sales and marketing, actually, you're trying to get trust. So trust should be, you've got data to back it up. You've got the test, you've got the pilots, you've got some schemes, you've got some things that you've done, because then you're not selling, you're just showcasing that actually this is proven. Maybe you haven't heard about it yet. We've actually done our steps. We've got all the tests in place. We've got all the certificates, the warranties, the insurances. That is really part of it, because even our supply chain, we want to make sure that everyone is above board. We want to make sure that we're pulling together a team that we're very confident that we can deliver to a project. So we're not going to just throw something in there we've never used, we don't understand necessarily. And obviously there might be some cases where it's something very small, but nothing that's going to have a major impact on a development. And for that, whatever we're using needs to have proven itself in some capacity somewhere else. So they're always going to have to be someone who's going to be that guinea pig, maybe, or doing it. And as I understand, as a client or as a company, you may not want to be the first person to do it, but you may have never used their product at all. So you're still number one in using their product, but you're not number one of their product, in its history, in its entirety. So it's that balance, and hoping that they can showcase that what they said they will do is what they've been delivering, and that they can deliver for you. And it's that relationship, collaboration. It's having an appetite to step forward, even with that tiny bit of risk, but managing that risk as much as possible, and hopefully innovating and getting there step by step.
And I suppose off the top of that as well, on top of that rather, is let's say you're giving them a chance in the UK, maybe they're very experienced in other markets, and then there's almost that straight away that trust of you guys have taken a chance, maybe, or you've adopted our approach where others might be less receptive, and therefore moving forward that's a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Because you're using their product, and that I'm sure they'll be able to help with the design side and that element. So yeah, I think it is a lot about relationships, isn't it? And I think that's really good. I mean, is there any particular systems or manufacturers or products that like you think, this is fantastic, this is something more people need to get on top of? Is it that simple, or you have more of a higher level look at all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mentioned membranes, like air tightness.
Membranes,
using like intelligent membranes, they're great products. But in terms of, we've been using them for a number of years now. But more recently, we're getting asked, foundations and concrete, and are you able to use something that uses less cement? And it's trying to look at options. And I think there's been opportunities that maybe the project didn't go ahead, so we didn't get to trial out, a new product there. But there's so many things coming on the market that maybe 30% less reduction, 30% reduction in carbon emissions, and 60, 70% potentially. And it's like, wow, obviously you have to look at the price difference compared to the reduction in carbon, and what does a client want? Where's the balance? What are their drivers? Is it ESG, and is it to do with the embodied carbon? How far do they want to take it? But there's so many products out there's so many things, and it's just about trying to filter based on what the client needs, what's their budget, and actually what's proven, what's tested, what can we feel confident for the most part that this will add something to the project, and not just be just a tick box exercise. It's actually helping, and we're contributing to making construction better.
Yeah, no, 100%. You've already gone through so much stuff, and I think I look at the time, it's like, this is great. I guess maybe as like a final feel, like about how you see next 5 years, next 10 years, how you see working with Kind and Build, or how you see generally the industry evolving. Because I suppose as in terms of your role in business development, maybe you're looking for trends, or you're looking for things that seem to have momentum. Do you see low energy building, let's say specifically a certification like Passivhaus, which at the moment it's not let's say it's not advocated explicitly by government. They're still using the Part L regulations, etc. How do you see, maybe in some of the conversations you've had with others, like, do you think there's real legs with Passivhaus in terms of a more consistent outlook of, let's say, maybe it's not just certain clients or certain builders like yourselves, or certain consultants and architects who are pushing for this? Can you see that momentum increasing, and kind of it'll almost be the standard across the UK? What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm trying to pick your brain.
Yeah. I want this to be the standard, and that's kind of why I wanted to be part of the advocacy for it. And hearing recently that Barrett's, had that development that's going to be one of the largest, it's sending a signal, hopefully, even more so in the industry, that, wow, even the big house builders are looking at this. And who knows what the ripple effect will be with other house builders and other developers to say, let's move forward. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to go, onto the open market, not have to do a self build and not have to tell my friends to avoid that, avoid that. Just be like, anyone here, you buy, working in housing, a lot of people come to me that I know in my church and around, just say, oh, what do you think about this? And I wanted to feel confident that no, I buy that home. It's not going to, it might be maybe a bit more upfront cost potentially, or maybe similar. In the long run, this is going to be amazing for you and your family, your health, your finances, your mind, your clarity, and it's just ticks so many boxes. Please buy the home. I wanted to go on the open market and find it, and hopefully we're going to see more of that. And not just the house builders, with churches as well. I'm a Christian, and I'm coming to an event. It's coming up soon, cross-denominational, so Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, Church of England. There's land, and I think there's coming now. There was a report, the Coming Home report, talking about how can the church really help in the times that we're in, to be as relevant as possible, and to see that there is a need. People need homes. There's such a distress with homelessness and with fuel poverty and with housing shortages. There's land there. How can we unlock that land? They may not be housing specialists, but there's Christians who are working in the sector who want to come together to bring our skill set to help in those areas, and to, use the finances that they've got, the land that they've got, to rebuild the places of worship, have community space, not just the houses, the community space, and also the affordable or social homes on that area. So you've got a real ecosystem where people can thrive, and then don't feel isolated. They've got spaces that their children can go, and that their families can interact with others. It's that holistic approach, and there's many churches who are just putting their hand up and saying, we want to do this. So there's a pipeline, and I know work with Klein & Co, you see on their website, they've built many churches, they work with many churches, and again, it's a synergy with my values and what they're doing that has been a really great time for me working here.
Wow, I can already see, like, that's your vision, right? That's what you want to. That's fantastic. That's interesting, actually, because even the local church we go to, like, they were trying to do some planning for some flats alongside the like, kind of towards the front of the church. And what was really interesting is, like, we have this housing crisis, and the more flats the better. And there was the whole, I think the planning was still a problem of, you can't see a certain view, and, like, I think I think that's a really interesting point what you're saying. It's kind of like away from what we were talking about before, which is interesting. It's about, like, unlocking that land, unlocking those opportunities, and aligns, as you say, with your why, if you like, which is fantastic. So
You also
like,
want to
Evette,
decarbonize.
yeah,
Because they want to
exactly.
decarbonize the existing buildings and build to a really good quality, future-proof standard. So Passivhaus is going to tick that box for them, hopefully for retrofit and for new build. So that's my
And
heart's
you're
desire.
retrofitting churches then? Is that like,
But
okay?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, that's probably an episode in itself, to in terms of the complexity,
Oh, I love that.
especially the older ones, right? Like, part two on the details of retrofit on a church. I mean, I think that's certainly something interesting, because these older buildings, and like how best to do it, because of course externally they're often protected, especially the older ones. Obviously there's newer ones as well, but I mean, that's something else we can think of. That's something else we can have a standard for, right? And perfect.
Exciting.
Well, Evette, thank you so much. It's great to meet you, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm so glad that there is that momentum from what you're finding, and that you guys are really delivering. So just keep going, fighting a good fight,
Thank
right?
you. And you, please use your platform. I'm so grateful that another person in the sector who is fighting for this too. So thank you so much.
No worry.
Okay.
All right.